request as trade and investment from the Minara Chamber, just to assist with some issues related to business support, related directly to COVID and the outcome of COVID and how to proceed. Amina has shared with us a series of questions that have come from the chamber, which we have gone through. But what we thought would be beneficial is for Donnie to give us a bit of an overview in terms of some of the pertinent regulations, and some of these touch on specifically some of the questions that have been asked, and then a few of the questions, about 3 of the questions pertained to imports and exports, and Claude Moodley will deal with those. So we have our colleagues Hashila Daya and Parusha Govender, who are our officials who actually work in terms of supporting companies and assisting them in general, and especially now during this period. And they will also provide input as and when necessary during the course of the presentation. So I'm going to hand over to Donnie and ask that he start the process with a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Claude. Good morning to everyone, and good morning to the Minara membership. I thought perhaps, firstly, we need to compliment Minara on this initiative in terms of, in these extraordinary days, in these extraordinary times of COVID-19 and the SA lockdown, that you sort out reaching out to your membership and informing them, keeping them up to speed with regards to the type of support that is on offer from government during these extraordinary times. We know that from the announcements that are there out in the public domain, that during lockdown, South Africa has moved from a level 5 to a level 4. And the level 4 brings around more industries to operate. But during these extraordinary times, it requires responsibility and accountability from all of us. We all need to play our part and ensuring that the lives of our workers, the safety measures needs to be implemented, etc. So what I'm going to do firstly is that I'm going to share with you a presentation that was done at the industry development webinar, which was facilitated by the convener, Nigel Ward, who's also the CEO of Toyota South Africa. And just putting into context as to, for your listeners who may have, for your members who may have missed out on that presentation, just to show the type of critical part that we are in and the type of roles and responsibilities that we need to play. I'm sharing with you a presentation. So just bear with me. I'm going to say share screen. This is the age of digital communication, and we seem to have.
Mind if I listen to this webinar? Do you guys mind if I listen to this?
Hello?
I said, do you guys mind if I listen to this webinar?
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine. What I do apologize if it's not coming onto your screen, but I'll very quickly go through the type of content that the industry development.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Dave. Okay, can I continue, facilitator?
Yes, please. Fine.
Okay, all right. So the first issue obviously relates to the state of the economy, and so we're saying that in terms of where we are, that with now the opening up from level 5 to level 4, the first important phase is the restarting.
I can't sit here and not do anything. I must learn.
Hi. Can I continue?
Please continue, Danny.
Yeah. All right. So the first phase of importance to us is obviously the restarting of the economy. And with the restarting of the economy, we're talking about now with the level 5 going to level 4, it's only open to certain sectors. And I'll share with you a presentation of those level 4 companies that are permitted to operate. But the reality is that we need to actually get it right. And the reality is that with this opening up of these economies, we are obviously permitted in terms of certain level, in terms of labor that can be brought into our workspace in terms of the numbers. And the guidelines are saying to us that in certain industries, there's up to 20% and going up to 50% with regards to certain manufacturing industries, etc. I'll cover that later on in the slide. But in order for that to happen, so there's going to be a phase-in of the labor into the workplace, and the responsibility on the employer is to ensure that the safety of the employees and the type of measures that needs to be put in place. That means, and you'll see that in a presentation that I will share with you, that the sanitizing of the environment, providing these our labor with the personal protection equipment, from masks, sanitizers, etc., and the sanitizing of the work environment, and to an extent maintaining, 1.5 to 2 meters in terms of distance in the workplace for workers, so that to prevent any of the spread of the coronavirus, and also safety measures in terms of screening workforce and screening the labor, etc., putting those mechanisms in place, temperature checks. And also, the employer and through the supervisors being very observant if they've, identify symptoms that needs to be further checked if the labor is displaying certain symptoms, and then obviously having an isolation space and then compulsory their medical checkup that needs to take place, etc. So it's important that we get this foundation right. And when we get this foundation right, then it means that the likelihood of working to level 5 will be, would not happen. So there's a responsibility and accountability to ensure that we do so. The next phase is obviously then looking at the economy, of stabilizing the economy and the growth. And so with companies now coming on board, and obviously now dealing with their tier 1 or tier 2 suppliers, opportunity. I need to emphasize that in this process, we need to continue with the type of transformation gains. So you remember, Africa is a very transformational agenda in terms of allowing for BBBE participation in the economy and allowing for SMME participation, etc. So we want to encourage those companies that when they are starting and when they are commencing with the activities that they're dealing with, they are also dealing with the SMME sector, they're dealing with SMME suppliers, and to an extent also continuing with the enterprise development and the supplier development plans. The reality is that we need this because we need to circulate the money in the economy. Right? So we need everyone to be participating in the value chain, although for now it's limited in terms of the sectors, but where those are opportunities for SMME participation, we need to continue with that, etc., to get the recirculation of money in the economy. And then obviously through this process of the stabilizing the economy is then to start now really looking at the industry developments and the type of reinvestments, companies can make, etc., as we move gradually from level 4 to level 3 to level 2 and 1, and where, all these restrictions are uplifted. So for us in this process, in these extraordinary times, obviously business retention expansion, particular business retention is important. Now I don't need to, to throw this type of theory out there in the public domain, but the reality is that it is more costly to start a new business versus getting reinvestments from an existing business. So we know for the fact that we've got now all of these businesses, established companies, medium-sized companies, and to an extent our SMMEs, etc. So it's critical for us to make sure that they are operating and they are stabilized. and that they are creating those job creation opportunities. And so the focus from our organization, Trade Investment KZN, is obviously to support our existing companies, etc. In addition to that, I just now want to just look at the sectors that have now come up for the that have been showcased in level 4 in terms of permitted to operate. All right, so I'm going to go to a presentation of mine. Mina, what we will do to the facilitator, we will share with you these detailed presentations, all right, which actually, because I'm mindful of time as well, that looks at some of the matters that employees need to address in creating a safe and conducive environment. But I think more importantly now, just to focus in terms of level 4 restrictions, in terms of the sectors that have come on board now. So we know that in terms of wholesale and retail, permitted, manufacturing is permitted, and in particular, manufacturing relates to the pulp paper industry, the issues around the automotive and other manufacturing, etc., and including the clothing and textile, which relates to winter clothing and bedding and heating type of products that they would produce, and even manufacturing of masks. Transport and logistics sector, we know that the media sector is permitted, services and emergency sector, and information and communications. Agriculture, forestry, mining and quarrying, electricity, gas and water, to an extent the construction sector, accommodation, food and beverage, domestic support, health and welfare, finance and business. So with regards to manufacturing, in terms of its labor force, is permitted to in terms of paper and pulp, stationery up to 50% in terms of stationery, cement and construction. Automotive for now up to 50% of the labor force, obviously phased in. Petroleum smelters and refineries, because it's obviously essential products that will help for the transport logistics, help for the movement of goods, help for the manufacturing of goods. So for that, 100% of its labor force. Then in terms of the clothing and textile, your winter clothing, bedding and heating, they can bring in up to 50% of the workforce. And then and other manufacturing up to 20%. But these guidelines, they have been mentioned in terms of the risk-adjusted strategy. And so this information is out there in the public domain. So from our side, we're saying that obviously it's rebooting the economy, the industry. We need to create a safe space from when workers are traveling from home to work and from work to home. And we need to find ourselves playing, looking at creatively how we're maintaining and helping our workforce to be very safe during these times, etc. All right. So I think I'm going to leave it there in terms of that. And then Claude had encouraged me to also, just talk about the funding measures that's on offer. And there's a lot of information out there into the, in the public domain. So just to mention that the different, if you look at the basket of funding, government has made 500 billion available. And if you had to unpack that 500 billion, we know that 130 billion is actually coming from existing budgets, where government is reprioritizing its programs and budget votes to look at how we can utilize the money, obviously for the support measures. So that's internally within the fiscus, that 130 billion. We know that 200 billion is coming from borrowings, etc. And then the other about 170 billion is obviously in terms of the type of support that the South African Revenue Services. In addition to that, we know about the Unemployment Insurance Fund and the type of disbursements that are made there. And in particular from the Unemployment Insurance Fund, I think as of last week, it was around about 3.3 billion, around 4 billion, close to 4 billion rand that have been disbursed. All right. So in terms of the funding, we know that we got sector relief funding from tourism, sports, arts, culture, and agriculture. The various funding mechanisms is available onto their websites. We got the SMME debt relief funding. And I think what's important here to mention, and I think this is where sometimes we don't readily get to know this good work that we do as a part of SMME. But I just want to mention that to date, they've received around about 135,000 applications. One must actually applaud the Department of Small Business and Enterprise, because from the time of receipt of an application, they've committed to a 7-day from the date of receipt for the approval of that application. Now you can imagine that 135,000 applications is quite a lot. One also needs to applaud them for the initiative where they're actually working with your private sector partners. For example, some of the consulting companies like the PwC, etc., is helping them with the assessment and the adjudication of those applications to expedite that. In addition to that, the normal hours of operations have now moved from 8 o'clock to 10 in the evening during the 5-day workday. And they're also working at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekend, just to create, to get these 135,000 odd applications expedited process. So one needs to actually, applaud the Department of Small Business for its role in terms of what it's doing. We also know that Business Partners has the Sukuma Relief Fund that's on offer. And we know that the IDC has working capital support, short-term working capital for the mining, the minerals, agriculture, agro-processing, and automotive sectors. And that information easily accessible on their website. I spoke about the Department of Small Business Development and the work that they're doing, and then and the essential funding that's available. But my colleagues, I know Purusha and Ashila, will also be able to support and talk to you a little bit more detail in terms of the funding measures. But just to say that, and I hope I haven't exhausted the time that I've been given, but rather to set the scene to say that we need to play our part in this extraordinary times. It's a new normal, and we need to adhere to the regulations. We need to create a safe space for our workforce. And there is these funding measures that are available. And TIKZN is here, is happy to work and support Minara and its members in terms of accessing these benefits on offer. And I shall leave that for now. Thank you, Facilitator.
To also note, just in addition to Donnie's presentation, Donnie mentioned that ETIA, the MEC, together with Trade and Investment KZN, has been hosting a series of webinars dealing with critical issues and a lot of the concerns that have been expressed generally by government. If you go, have been expressed to government, and these have included issues such as business continuity, business support, the regulations and guidelines for doing business, and then also just an online resource and news portal for COVID-19. If you go to our website, tikzn.co.za, you'll see a flashing icon with the face of the MEC. If you click on that, you'll see some downloads from the webinars that were hosted and a lot of information. The presentation that Donnie has just gone through, you'll also find it on that website. And you can access it in terms of support measures and what Category 4 means for us. So that's additional information that you can access. Thank you. Claude, Claude Woodley, could you talk a little bit about some of the points that Amina raised regarding imports and exports?
Okay, thank you so much, facilitator. Can you firstly, can you hear me?
Yes, clear.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Johnny, thank you so much, Johnny, for setting the scene and for sharing information about the issue of it's not business as usual and the support that's available by government. Colleagues, I have to say that we're not in the best of times and best of shape with regards to where we are with regards to COVID-19, and especially from a trade point of view. that's where we see some of the biggest impact as well. Recently we had a webinar related to investment and trade, and we also had a response from Transnet on the movement of goods and people, especially in the harbors. And although the ports and the harbors are open, my point to exporters and importers is that you need to ensure that your communication is clear with your freight forwarders and your logistics companies, as well as with your customers and your importers across the border. And this is important because we want to ensure the safe passage of goods, and also the efficient passage of goods. With that said, I just want to touch base on some of the certificates that was highlighted as part of the questions. There's a whole basket of certificates that are required, which is part of the export, process. It starts off with firstly registering as an exporter. You've got to be registered as an exporter. So that process is done by SARS, and there's a number of documents that you need to submit. The application form is called the GA185. I'm going to share my screen so that I can pull up that document. This is what the document looks like. Colleagues, can you all see this?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Claude.
Okay, so this is the GA185. I'm not going to go through the details of this document, but it's a simple application form. This is for companies to register for import and export. But basically, in Annexure 5, this is where you could also apply for your various special certifications. For example, your export into SADC, which was one of the questions. So you could do a dual certification at the same time. So if you're registering as an exporter and you want to register for SADC, you can do it at the same time. Or if you've done an export registration already and you want to register for SADC or for AGOA, then this would be the form that you would need to fill in, and you would need to attach the relevant supporting documentation. The supporting documentation, it's quite a list of documents, but what we've developed is how to register on SARS for SADC, how to register on SARS for export registration, which we will share with Amina for distribution as well. And it's quite simple. It tells you about the application form that needs to be used. It tells you what supporting documentation, for example, your ID documents, original utility bills, your proof of, so it's your FICA documents, your SARS or your tax compliance documents, your company registration documents, and so on and so on. There's also a document which talks about the company resolution, which needs to be signed by all directors to ensure that there's consensus that the company needs to either register as an importer or exporter. So those are some of the technical aspects of it, So that covers what is called the import and export registration, but it also deals with your various other certificates related to exports of products to USA under the AGOA, exports of products into, for example, your SADC region, and those would be quite mandatory type of documents that you need to have. So these are all documents that or certificates that you would be able to acquire via SARS. So it's your South African Revenue Services, which is under your Customs and Excise, So I've got a contact list with details, which I will share with you towards the end of my few minutes talk. So this covers aspects that are covered under SARS. Now the next certification that I want to talk about, it actually talks to your certificates of origin. And these are normally administered by the Chambers of Commerce and Industry. So your Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, your Pietermaritzburg Chamber, and so on, would have an office and people responsible for issuing what is called a certificate of origin. And this document stipulates where is the product coming from, okay? What is the local content of the product? What is the content of labor in the product? And certain of your importers would require you to have these certificates of origin, okay? The good thing is that colleagues, the good thing is that recently you've got these documents that can now be applied online. So if you go online and you do your application, I think within the turnaround time of between 2 to 3 days, you should be able to get your certificate of origin issued by the Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, you need to support that, or you need to submit the supporting documentation to ensure that the process is quite efficient. So that covers your certificate of origin. There's other certificates which are required. For example, now that we're in COVID-19, you have the certificate for the exportation of certain products, and there's at the moment 3 categories that you need a permit for. It's for your essential products, and those products would be for your face masks, your hand sanitizers, and any products that could be utilized for the production of vaccines. So those are there's very strict controls on export of those products. So you need to apply to ITAC, which is the International Administration Commission. I'm just going to show you a document here, which let me share this here with you. It's also a simple document, right? Okay. Colleague, can you see this document? Okay, so this is quite a simple document, and this is for your export of essential products. So if you're manufacturing face masks, or if you're manufacturing hand sanitizer and you want to export the product, you would need to apply to ITAC for this, for that. But you need to also provide information related to quantities and the rand value and so on. But I'm going to take you very quickly through some of the questions which may be asked in your application, and that's quite important when you're doing this application. So there's a few questions, and I'll take you through it very quickly. The first one talks about the quantity of the products for which the export permit applies. So in that form, it talks about the quantity, and you need to be able to mention that. Then you also got to look at what is the percentage of the production and current inventory intended to export within the next 3 months. So they want to see what I've, not only just now, because this permit is valid for 6 months, so it's a 6-month permit. So they want to look at what impact will that have also on the local economy, because you are exporting a product which is essential. It may starve supply into the local market. So they want to see what is your plan for the next 3 months, okay? And then question number 3, what volume of your production and current inventory of the products that an export permit is being applied for are intended for the domestic market. So they want to look at what is your domestic versus your export market, okay? And are you aware of any manufacturers that would provide any similar products? And then they want to look at historically, what is your trade? What have you done in the last 6 months? What have you done in the last 12 months? And so on. So you've got to be able to stipulate this type of information. So I think the question here again is also for new companies entering the industry, or entering the export market, and you haven't exported hand sanitizers or face masks previously, you may need to motivate strongly as to why you should have that permit issued to you. We've actually had a live case study that we've dealt with in the last few days. It was a company that manufactured, it's a food supplement manufacturing company, and they saw the opportunity for them to manufacture hand sanitizers. So they set up a separate production line, which was isolated from their normal operations, and they manufactured quantities of hand sanitizers for local demand. They recently found that the local demand was not sufficient for the manufacturing, production runs, and they were seeking export markets. So they managed to look at identifying one of the African countries, and they secured a deal. The problem was when they applied to ITAC for the permit to export, they were declined. So via support from my colleague Francois, who intervened, he managed to actually get to the bottom of the process and do a further motivation, and eventually the client was issued with a permit. But as I said, some of the questions which are covered now as to what you would need to put into your motivation is quite important for you to be able to get that permit. So it's not just easy that people at ITAC is just going to sign a permit for you. You need to be able to motivate for it, right? So that was a live case study, and it was a successful end result where this company was able to manufacture and supply the product into our neighboring African country. Okay, so that covers the ITAC registration for export of essential products. Other certifications include fumigation certification, which you are required to have. For example, if you are exporting products and it goes into a pallet, so certain countries would want you to have that pallet fumigated, so that there's no pesticides or pesticides that actually are transported. And this type of support and assistance is easily obtained via your freight forwarder. So my encouragement, if you are venturing into export, and if you haven't done it before, then your freight forwarder will be able to walk you through the process and assist you with these type of certification permits. And then when we're talking about the export of food products or live animals or processed meat products, then there's certain certifications that you would need to obtain via Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. Fortunately, in KZN, we have the Agency for Food Safety that issues those type of certificates, and their offices are based in TIKZN and our one-stop shop. So you are welcome to actually contact us, and we will put you in touch with those persons so that you can apply for your food safety certification. It's normally your SADC certification for your export of your products.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, Claude. We've got 4.5 minutes left.
Right.
That was quite.
I'm just going to wrap up. Yeah, I'm just going to wrap up very quickly, Claude.
Yeah.
With just one more item, and then I'm done. It'll just take a minute, right? The last element with regards to certification talks about your pre-inspections, and especially if you are exporting into Africa, there are certain entities that are responsible for doing pre-inspections of your goods, and they would normally look at basically the quality or that your product conforms to what your buyer is looking at, and these entities are Bureau Veritas, SGS, and Intertech. So I will share contact details of these various entities with you, with Amina and the rest of the team, so that you can circulate to interested parties. Thank you so much, Claude.
Sorry for cutting off a very informative slot there, Claude. I see that we only have 3.5 minutes left on this Zoom meeting before it shuts off. I wanted to thank Donnie and Claude for their inputs. And I encourage all of the colleagues from Minara to please reach out to us directly. Our one-stop shop is fully operational. Our team is fully operational. Our colleagues are online. We are available to support and assist you. If you don't have the contact details for Donnie, Hashila, and Parusha, Amina will share that with you. If there are any questions, even if it doesn't appear to be direct business support, reach out to us and we'll see how we can. If we can't assist you, we can definitely forward you on to the right authority that can assist you to resolve your issue. whether it's with CIPC and the registering of your business in terms of essential services. If it's an issue related to the municipality, we'll see who we can link you with up there, but we will definitely try to resolve your situation for you. We thank you very much for joining us this morning. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time for question and answers. What I'm going to hand over to Amina to wrap up in the last 2 minutes.
Claude, we'd like to thank you and your team on behalf of Minara for availing yourself this morning to inform members. And like I said and messaged everyone, they're welcome to contact our officers for any of your contact details. Thank you.
Thank you, Amina and colleagues. It was a pleasure from our side to be part of this process, and we look forward to possible inquiries out of this.